The Innocence Project, or Project Innocence, whatever one it is, that operates in multiple cities. This is a nonprofit that takes millions, hundreds of millions from George Soros, who calls the shots there. And they're...
Again, when you say George Soros, that just means takes money from the Jews, because when they bring up George Soros, it's just code word for they're getting money from the Jews. So, because we're all horrible, terrible people, right? So they have to, but they can't say that, so they have to say this. They're upset at this Innocence Project and how they take money from George Soros and whatever. But their problem is because they're horrible racist people who don't want to see anything of people getting out of prison.
They try and hide behind the fact of saying that they're trying to release innocent people who have been wrongly convicted.
They're trying to hide behind that. Like the Innocence Project has, failed to release some people from prison, and other times they've actually successfully managed to get people freed from prison. And that's a good thing, because you shouldn't want people unjustly imprisoned, right? I mean, that's a great thing that they're doing. But of course, a Republican's going to have a problem with it.
But when you look at what they actually do, they just look for any excuse whatsoever to put convicted criminals back on the street to cause chaos.
Okay, so they want to... No. I mean, yes, these people are convicted as criminals. And so they're trying to put them out of prison because they believe that they were wrongly convicted. And here's the thing. Do you ever see that Making a Murderer, the thing on Netflix, where they talked about there was a Steve guy or whatever his name was? Well, it wasn't Steve Irwin, but it was Steve something. I forget the name. So maybe someone in the chat can say it. But you had him, and they were going over all of the actions that the Montauk or whatever, Wisconsin police officers did. And like they couldn't find anything in the house to convict him, and then magically the police officer went back in and found a key that helped prove his guilt. And there was all sorts of things in this show, and that basically told me that I don't know if this guy did it or not. I absolutely don't know if he actually did the crimes that he was accused of doing. And he was actually one of the people, I think, that was freed, I think because of the Innocence Project or whatever, or at least whatever. But I don't know if he did it or not. But what I can tell you is that he should have never been convicted in the first place because of how wrongly the police officers acted. That case was so tainted, they should have never found a conviction. The judge should have thrown it out because there should have never been a conviction. Steve Avery, thank you, Aaron. There should have never been a conviction. Again, I don't know if he did it or not, but there still should have never been a conviction. This is why conservatives tend to have so many problems with defense attorneys, because defense attorneys are defending criminals. No, defense attorneys, if they do their job correctly, they make sure that the prosecution follows the rules, that they dot every I, that they cross every T. And if the prosecution can still prove their case with the defense attorney saying, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, you're breaking the rules, you're not supposed to be able to do that. If they get the conviction, then hopefully with a good defense attorney, you still did the job right. That they did it fairly and equitably. But conservatives don't like that. They just want to lock people up. I got this from Jeff Couer when it comes to the deportations that are going on. I'm like, there are 18 Filipinos off the cruise ship that got seized without due process, without hearings, just detained, deported, and banned. No due process whatsoever. And he's making excuses because, but there's all these other people that are legal here, so it doesn't matter. Ben Franklin was the one that said, if I'm recalling the quote correctly, that it's better for 100 guilty people to go free than one innocent person be locked up. That's how our justice system is supposed to work. It's supposed to be difficult to convict somebody of a crime. But yes, these people, every single person, every single case that the Innocence Project takes up is a case of somebody who was convicted of a crime. But they're going to say that they were wrongly convicted of the crime, that they should have never been convicted of the crime. Now, that could be because the person is innocent. That could be because the prosecution broke the rules. And in both cases, that should be true. They should be let out. I mean, you had the stupid Supreme Court ruling that harmed that, Salinas v. Texas, another one of these horrible Alito rulings that said that somebody's silence could be used against them in court if they don't plead the fifth. Dumb. Anyway, let's continue with this brain surgeon's comments, and we'll go from there. I think his name is Derek Fossier or something.
For example, there was a man called Dan Bright right here in New Orleans who was released. Something about, they tried to retest a murder weapon for DNA evidence, and it didn't exist, so therefore this man was not guilty. It was a huge stretch. Well, soon after he was released, he tried to kill somebody else, and he was rearrested and rejailed. And you see this over and
Okay, so the guy was rearrested and rejailed. One has nothing to do with the other. Innocence Project New Orleans. Let's bring up this case. Exonerated June 14th, 2004. Incarcerated 9 years, 3 months, 7 days. Dan Bright was wrongfully convicted in 1996 of the 1995 murder of Murray Barnes. Mr. Bright was represented by a lawyer who did not investigate the case and was drunk at his trial. At the same time, the state withheld FBI documents that named the real killer in the murder and evidence that undermined the credibility of the state's primary witness. As a consequence of the woeful performance of Mr. Bright's defense attorney and the unconstitutional withholding of key evidence by the prosecution and the FBI, the jury sentenced Mr. Bright to death. He was 26 years old at the time. Mr. Bright's sentence was later commuted to life, at which time he made requests to have the identity of the true killer released through the Freedom of Information Act, citing the real killer's right to privacy. Citing the real killer's right to privacy, the federal government declined to reveal his name. Why would the real killer have a right to privacy if the real killer was the real killer? You don't have the right to be privately be a murderer. Mr. Bright was represented by Ben Cohen and Clive Stafford Smith from the Louisiana Crisis Assistance Center. Innocence Project New Orleans signed on to the case to provide additional support. Shortly after, a federal district court ruled Mr. Bright had the right to know the identity of the true killer. Shocking, I know. Louisiana Supreme Court reversed Mr. Bright's conviction in 2004, and he was released and exonerated on June 14th, 2004. When he was released from prison, among the most relieved was Kathleen Hawk Norman, the foreperson of the jury that had sentenced him to death. She had become one of his strongest advocates after learning the evidence had been withheld from the jury on which she served. She also became one of his closest friends after release. As a result of her involvement in Mr. Bright's case, Kathleen dedicated countless hours to raising awareness about wrongful convictions. So good for her and good for them. Let's see. In 2021, New Orleans District Attorney Jason Williams agreed to reduce a charge of attempted murder against Dan Bright to misdemeanor battery. Bright had previously been on death row after a murder conviction that was later overturned and then arrested again for allegedly stabbing a man. The victim in the second case signed an affidavit stating Bright was not the attacker. Williams, in one of his first actions as district attorney, pleaded the appeal. This is why you don't believe Republicans. This is why you don't believe Republicans. This Fossier dude was saying that he was rearrested, but the person who was stabbed said in an affidavit that Bright wasn't the attacker who stabbed him. But he's sitting here making excuses as to why we should lock these people up. The victim in the second case signed an affidavit saying Bright was not the attacker. Williams was one of the first actions as district attorney, agreed to the plea deal, and Bright was released after serving the time associated with the misdemeanor charge, which he had already served while in jail. Williams emphasized that he was upholding his promise to not coerce innocent people into pleading guilty to the crimes they didn't commit. He stated that the plea deal was the right thing to do, given the victim's statement. Again, this person is saying, he was found guilty of another crime. No, he was again wrongly accused. And Jason Williams, the DA, who's a good guy, there's a picture. I have a picture of me with him and George and Evander Holyfield. Good guy. And this is one of the guys. This in his election attempt, he was trying to get elected. And he was running against somebody else, and his Democratic opponent was bringing up how Jason Williams was a defense attorney for a while, criticizing him for being a defense attorney. Again, defense attorneys have an important role to play in the position, and if you don't understand that, you shouldn't be a prosecutor. Prosecutors should understand the important roles that defense attorneys play.
Do you know that in all of the interviews that Royce has done, even with Fox 8, WWL, not a single person has asked him about his relationship with this extremely controversial far-left organization?
If it's far left to want people who are wrongly convicted to be freed from prison, I guess I'm on the far left. But again, these people are so far to the right that they think Joe Biden, a centrist, is to the far left. These people call Joe Biden a socialist. He's not a socialist. That the idea is laughable.
Of course they won't. I mean, they're as evil as a lot of these candidates.
You know what evil is? Evil is making an argument that innocent people should not be freed from prison because a few of the people exonerated because of the actions of the Innocence Project went on to do bad things in the future. That's evil. This is what conservatism brings you. This is why conservatives should not be allowed to gain any more power, but we keep being stupidly giving them more power.
I don't think they even know what Project Innocence is. That's the problem. I mean, it's just...
The idea that we don't know what the Innocence Project... Absolutely. We know what the Innocence Project is, and we support what they do. And they get a lot of wrongly convicted people released from prison, and that's a good frickin' thing. Unless you're a scumbag, evil, MAGA bastard.
You know, the whole time talking bad about people. I want to see Oliver Thomas step up and be a voice for reason. He's not doing that yet, but I think he has potential. And
Oliver Thomas, just so you know, is somebody who was rightfully convicted of a crime. He was actually convicted of a crime, and he's back serving as a council person for New Orleans District E, which is out in New Orleans East, and he's running for mayor now. And he wants somebody convicted of a crime. I guess he supports Donald Trump too, so he likes criminals. This is conservatism in a nutshell. They embrace actual criminals and reject people who are innocent from being freed from prison. This is how you get Nazism. This is how they goose step behind the Führer in chief. It's absurd. Like, somebody watching this would be like, this is a bad TV show. This is a bad plot. No, well, apparently it's real life. But to Chad or to Mike in the chat or whatever, this is what y'all are voting for when you're voting for conservatism. You're voting for people who support crap like this, who want to keep innocent people in prison and free guilty people. And vote for guilty people. And vote for guilty people who are going to free guilty people. How many people pled guilty to assaulting cops on January 6th that Donald Trump then freed? Y'all are some stupid motherfuckers. If you think that's good. Those people should still be rotting in jail for assaulting cops. I thought y'all supported cops, but you only support cops when they murder black people like George Floyd. You will have the back of Derek Chauvin, no problem. But when the people who are the D.C. police, the Capitol Police, tell you that they were assaulted by these MAGA scumbags, insurrectionists, you're like, oh, they should be freed. How stupid is that? That's fucking ridiculous and fucking ignorant. Oh, let's keep the people in prison who are exonerated because they might do something wrong. Fuck off. And fuck you.